A millionaire found her lost mother with one sanitation worker, and what she discovered made her cry. Rebecca Harrison never imagined that an ordinary Tuesday morning would change her life forever. At 32, she had built a business empire that placed her among the wealthiest women in the country. But all her success couldn't fill the void she had carried in her chest for 5 long years. The traffic was heavier than usual on Fifth Avenue that morning when she spotted a scene that made her heart stop for a few seconds. A man dressed as a sanitation worker was carefully pushing a wooden cart, and inside it sat an elderly lady with grey hair who looked strangely familiar. Rebecca slammed on the brakes so hard that the driver behind her honked angrily. Her hands trembled as she watched that fragile figure curled up in the makeshift cart. It couldn't be her, not after all these years. The businesswoman opened the door of her imported car without even worrying about the traffic around her. Her high heels echoed on the asphalt as she walked toward the sanitation worker who had stopped near the curb. "Excuse me," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. The man turned to her with a gentle smile. He had dark hair, appeared to be in his 40s, and his eyes showed a kindness that contrasted with the harshness of life on the streets. "Yes, ma'am," he replied politely. Rebecca stared intently at the elderly woman in the cart. The woman wore worn but clean clothes, and her face showed signs of confusion. Still, there was no doubt. It was her mother. "This lady, where did you find her?" "Mrs. Dorothy?" asked the sanitation worker, gently stroking the elderly woman's hair. "I found her wandering the streets about 3 months ago. She was lost, no ID, nothing." "Dorothy," whispered Rebecca, feeling her legs go weak. It was really her. "Do you know her?" asked the man, noticing the sudden paleness of the elegant woman. Rebecca hesitated before answering. How to explain that this fragile, confused woman was her mother? How to tell him she had abandoned her after a terrible fight 5 years ago? I think so," she murmured. "Mrs. Dorothy, look here," the sanitation worker said softly to the elderly woman. "This young lady wants to talk to you." The elderly woman slowly raised her eyes. For a moment, her gaze fixed on Rebecca's face but soon shifted away with apparent discomfort. "I don't know her," she said in a hoarse voice. "I don't want to talk to anyone." The denial hit Rebecca like a punch to the stomach. Her own mother didn't recognize her. "My name is Rebecca," she said, crouching near the cart. "No!" the elderly woman suddenly screamed, clutching the sanitation worker's arm. "She's going to take me away. Don't let her, James." The man named James immediately comforted the lady, speaking to her in a calm, protective tone. "Calm down, Mrs. Dorothy. No one is taking you anywhere. I'm here." Rebecca stood up, feeling tears burning her eyes. The fear in her mother's gaze was real and painful. You take care of her?" she asked with a choked voice. "I do what I can," replied James, still stroking the hair of the elderly woman who was gradually calming down. "She has no one, remembers nothing. When I found her, she was hurt and very scared." Hurt? Rebecca felt a tightness in her chest. She had some cuts on her hands and bruises on her arms. I don't know what happened to her before she got here, but by the looks of it, it couldn't have been good. The businesswoman closed her eyes, trying to hold back the tears. Her mother had suffered, and she wasn't there to protect her. Can I do something to help?" she asked, taking her wallet from her purse. "I have money. I can pay for treatment, a better place for her to stay." "It's not about money," said James, kindly but firmly. "Mrs. Dorothy needs affection, patience. She trusts me now. I can't just hand her over to a stranger." "Stranger?" The word came out more bitter than Rebecca intended. "I am her daughter." James watched her carefully for a few seconds, processing the information. "You're the daughter she mentions in her nightmares?" "What do you mean?" "Almost every night she wakes up crying, repeating the name Rebecca. She keeps apologizing for something, saying she can't forgive." Rebecca felt the world spin around her. She leaned on the car to keep from falling. "Forgive?" she said. "Forgive?" She says she can't forgive at someone. I never could really understand because she always gets very agitated when I try to ask. The sound of traffic around them seemed distant as Rebecca tried to process that information. Her mother, even in a state of confusion, carried the hurt of their separation. "Where do you stay?" she asked, trying to compose herself. "I have a little spot under an overpass not far from here. It's not much, but I keep her warm and fed." The reality of the situation hit Rebecca with full force. Her mother, who once lived in a comfortable home, was now sleeping under an overpass, depending on the kindness of a stranger. "I can arrange better housing, medical care, everything she needs," she said quickly. "And then," asked James, crossing his arms, "when you get tired of taking care of her, will you abandon her again?" The accusation, though fair, cut deep. Rebecca lowered her head, feeling the weight of guilt. "It wasn't like that," she murmured. "Then explain to me how it was." Rebecca looked again at her mother, who now seemed calmer, but still stayed close to the sanitation worker as if he were her only protection in the world. "We had a fight 5 years ago," she began with difficulty. "My mother was having problems, forgetting things, behaving strangely. I was building my company, working 18 hours a day. I had no patience." James listened in silence, but his expression showed he expected more explanation. "One night she left the house and got lost. When they brought her back, I yelled at her, said terrible things, told her she was messing up my life, that she needed to be institutionalized for her own good." "And then?" "She said she'd rather live on the street than be a burden to me." Rebecca swallowed hard. "I was so furious I told her to do whatever she wanted. The next morning she was gone. I never saw her again." "And you didn't look for her?" "I looked for a few days, but I was so hurt. I thought she'd come back when she calmed down. Then with time, I thought maybe it was better this way. I was wrong, very wrong." James shook his head slowly, processing the story. "Mrs. Dorothy isn't right in the head," he said finally. "Some days she recognizes me, others she thinks I'm someone else. But one thing never changes. She always talks about her daughter." "What does she say?" "That she misses her, that she did something wrong and needs to apologize, that she wants to see her daughter one last time before it's too late." Rebecca felt as if she'd been slapped. Her mother had spent 5 years carrying the guilt for a fight that was both their responsibility. "Can I visit her?" she asked in a small voice. "You can try," replied James, "but she's afraid of people she doesn't know. And from what I saw just now, she's especially afraid of you." "Afraid of me?" "Mrs. Dorothy has some traumas. I don't really know what happened to her before I found her, but whenever someone talks about taking her away, she panics." Rebecca crouched down again, this time keeping a respectful distance from her mother. "Mom," she said softly, "it's me, Rebecca, your daughter." The elderly woman slowly raised her eyes, and for a moment it seemed she was going to say something. But then her face twisted into an expression of fear. "You're going to commit me again," she whispered. "I don't want to go back to that terrible place." "Commit you again?" Rebecca looked at James, confused. "What is she talking about?" "She mentions a place where she stayed for a while. She always gets very agitated when she remembers. From what I understand, it wasn't a good experience." Rebecca's heart raced. Could her mother really have been committed to some institution? "Mrs. Dorothy," James said gently, "the young lady isn't going to take you anywhere. She just wants to talk." "I don't trust her," murmured the elderly woman. "She abandoned me before." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like, and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing, her mother's words echoed in Rebecca's mind like a sentence. She truly had abandoned the woman who raised her, who sacrificed so much for her over the years. "I know I made mistakes," said Rebecca, fighting back tears. "But I want to make things right. I want to take care of you." "Words," murmured Dorothy. "Just pretty words." James stood up and signaled for Rebecca to step aside a little. "Listen," he said in a low voice. "It's not going to be easy. Mrs. Dorothy trusts me because I've proven every day that I won't abandon her. If you really want to help, you'll have to do the same." "How?" "Start slowly. Show up every day. Bring something useful. Show you care with actions, not just words. And most importantly, don't try to force anything." Rebecca nodded, feeling she finally had a direction. "Can I start today?" "You can, but don't pressure her. Let her get used to you first." "Thank you," said Rebecca, sincerely grateful. You have a very big heart to care for her like this. James gave a sad smile. My own mother went through something similar before she passed. I didn't get the chance to care for her as I should have. Maybe by caring for Mrs. Dorothy, I can make peace with myself. The man's honesty touched Rebecca deeply. Here was someone caring for her mother out of pure kindness, expecting nothing in return. What time do you usually come by here? We pass by this street every morning around 8. Mrs. Dorothy likes to watch the bustle of people going to work, says it reminds her of better times. I'll be here tomorrow at 8 then. Just one thing, said James, lightly touching her arm. Don't come dressed like that. Mrs. Dorothy gets frightened by very elegant clothes. It reminds her of, well, of people who hurt her. Rebecca looked at her own expensive clothes and understood. Her appearance as a successful executive represented exactly what had driven her mother away years ago. Understood, she said. And James, thank you for everything. The sanitation worker just nodded and turned his attention back to Dorothy, who was watching the conversation with a suspicious expression. Let's go, Mrs. Dorothy. We still have to collect the cans on Broadway Street before other collectors arrive. As she watched James carefully push the cart with her mother, Rebecca felt a mixture of gratitude and shame she had never experienced before. A stranger was doing what she should have done years ago. That night, Rebecca couldn't focus on anything. She cancelled all her meetings and spent hours thinking about her mother. How had she survived all these years? What really happened for her to end up in that state? She decided to hire a private investigator to try to discover her mother's whereabouts during the 5 years of separation. She needed to understand what had happened in order to help her properly. The next morning, Rebecca woke up before the alarm. She swapped her designer outfit for a simple pair of jeans and a basic blouse. Looking at herself in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. But perhaps that was exactly what she needed to do: set aside the cold executive and rediscover the caring daughter she once was. She arrived at Fifth Avenue at 7:45, as nervous as a teenager going on a first date. When she saw James approaching with the wheelchair, her heart raced. "Good morning," she said, maintaining a respectful distance. "Oh, you came back?" said James, seeming genuinely surprised. "Good morning. How are you?" "Anxious," she admitted honestly. Dorothy looked at Rebecca for a few seconds, but didn't show the same fear as the day before. "I brought coffee and sweet bread," said Rebecca, extending a thermal bag. "I thought you might be hungry." James accepted the bag with a grateful smile. "That's very kind of you, Mrs. Dorothy, the young lady brought breakfast for us." The elderly woman observed Rebecca with curiosity, as if trying to remember where she had seen her before. "You look like someone I used to know," she murmured. Rebecca's heart tightened. "Perhaps we've met before," she said carefully. "Perhaps," agreed Dorothy, accepting the cup of hot coffee James offered her. For the next 15 minutes, Rebecca simply stood there, watching James care for his mother with a patience and tenderness that moved her. He checked if she was warm enough, if the coffee wasn't too hot, if she was comfortable in the wheelchair. "I need to go to work," Rebecca finally said. "May I come back tomorrow?" "Of course," replied James. "Mrs. Dorothy, the young lady wants to know if she can come back tomorrow." The elderly woman looked at Rebecca for a long moment before giving a small nod. "She may come back," she said quietly. It was a small victory, but to Rebecca, it meant the world. Over the following days, Rebecca established a routine. Every day at 8 in the morning, she was on Fifth Avenue with breakfast for the three of them. Gradually, she began to notice small progress in how her mother treated her. On the 5th day, Dorothy allowed Rebecca to sit on the bench near the wheelchair. On the 7th day, the elderly woman asked a question. "Do you have children?" "No," replied Rebecca. "I never had time to build a family." "That's sad," murmured Dorothy. "Family is everything in life." The irony of the remark was not lost on Rebecca. Her mother, even without fully recognizing her, still valued the family ties they had broken. It was on the 10th day that the private investigator called with information that changed everything. "I found records of your mother at a private psychiatric clinic," he said over the phone. "She was hospitalized there for almost 2 years." 2 years? Rebecca felt the world spin. "Yes. Apparently she was taken there after being found wandering the streets. She had no identification, so she was treated as an indigent patient. But how is that possible? I looked for her. The clinic is in the greater New York area. It's very likely your mother moved around a lot before being found. Rebecca quickly wrote down the name and address of the clinic. I need to know what happened there. My mother is very afraid when hospitalization is mentioned. I'll investigate further, but I can already tell you that this clinic has had several problems with the medical board in recent years. After hanging up, Rebecca stood still in the office, trying to process the information. Her mother had been hospitalized for 2 years in a problematic institution. That explained both the fear and the physical marks James had mentioned. That afternoon, she decided to go to the clinic to try to get more information. The place was an old, poorly maintained building on the outskirts of the city. The receptionist, a middle-aged woman with a bored expression, barely looked up when Rebecca approached. I'm looking for information about a patient who was hospitalized here a few years ago, said Rebecca. We don't provide information about former patients, the woman replied curtly. It's my mother, Dorothy Harrison. The receptionist hesitated for a moment, as if the name sounded familiar. You'd have to speak with Dr. Richard, but he isn't here. When does he return? I don't know. He hasn't been around for a while. Rebecca felt there was something strange about the woman's evasive answer. Can I at least find out when my mother was discharged? She wasn't discharged, said the receptionist, lowering her voice. She ran away. Ran away? She escaped during a transfer to another unit. She was never found again. The revelation left Rebecca disturbed. Her mother hadn't simply left the clinic, she had fled. This suggested something very bad was happening there. Why was she being transferred? I can't give out that information. Rebecca decided to try another approach. Was my mother injured when she left here? The receptionist looked around nervously before answering. Look, I shouldn't say anything, but this clinic isn't the same anymore. Things have happened here that weren't right. What kind of things? Patients being over-medicated, families being prevented from visiting, treatments, questionable ones. Rebecca felt a wave of anger growing inside her. Was my mother mistreated here? I didn't say that, the woman defended herself quickly. I just said things changed a lot after the old director left. And where is this former director now? He retired, but I heard he was very upset with the direction the clinic took. Rebecca mentally noted that she needed to find this former director. Perhaps he could clarify what really happened to her mother. Returning home that night, Rebecca felt physically sick. Thinking that her mother had suffered mistreatment in an institution where she should have been safe left her furious. The next day, she found James and his mother at the usual spot, but her expression must have been revealing her emotional state because James immediately asked what had happened. I found out where my mother was for part of the time we were apart, she said, offering the usual breakfast. And? In a psychiatric clinic. From what I could gather, it wasn't a good experience. James looked at Dorothy with concern. That explains a lot, he murmured. She has terrible nightmares. Wakes up screaming about injections and dark rooms. Rebecca closed her eyes, imagining the suffering her mother had endured. James, can I ask you something? When you found my mother, did she say anything about the clinic? She did. She said she had to run away, that they were going to hurt her again. It took me weeks to convince her she was safe. And she never mentioned having family. Never talked about me. James hesitated before answering. She did, but always with a lot of pain. She said her daughter didn't want her anymore, that she had been a burden in the girl's life. Each word was like a stab to Rebecca's heart. I was young and ignorant, she murmured. I didn't know how to handle her problems. Do you want to tell her who you really are? Rebecca looked at her mother, who was sipping her coffee and watching the street activity with interest. Not yet. I think she needs to trust me first, like she trusts you. You know, said James thoughtfully, there's something that's always intrigued me about Mrs. Dorothy. What? She carries some old papers in her pocket. Never lets anyone see them, but sometimes she takes them out to look and gets very emotional. Papers? They look like newspaper or magazine clippings. She keeps them as if they were treasures. Rebecca wondered what her mother could be keeping so dearly. "James," she said suddenly, "I need to make you a proposal." "What kind of proposal?" "I want to hire you to care for my mother officially. I can pay a decent salary, arrange proper housing for both of you, medical care." James stopped walking and looked at her with surprise. "Are you serious?" "Completely. You know my mother better than anyone now. She trusts you. It would be the best solution for everyone. But I have no training to be a caregiver. You have something much better. You have heart. And my mother needs that more than any diploma." James fell silent for a few minutes, considering the proposal. "And if one day Mrs. Dorothy remembers who you really are, will she still want me around?" "I hope so. But regardless, I will always be grateful for what you've done for her." "I need to think," James finally said. "Of course. There's no rush." But in truth, Rebecca did feel rushed. With each passing day, she noticed her mother was more fragile, more confused. She didn't know how much time they still had together, but she wanted to ensure it was the best time possible. That afternoon, she managed to locate the former director of the psychiatric clinic. Dr. Anthony Mitchell was a man in his mid-60s who agreed to meet her at a cafe downtown. "Dorothy Harrison," he repeated when Rebecca mentioned her mother's name. "I do remember her. A very sweet lady, but she arrived in a terrible state." "What do you mean, terrible?" "She was malnourished, dehydrated, with signs of having lived on the streets for a considerable time. But the worst were the signs of mental confusion. She was clearly in the early stages of dementia." "And what was the treatment like?" Dr. Anthony's face darkened. "While I was there, we cared for her with affection. She was a patient beloved by the whole team. But after I retired, what happened? The clinic changed management. The new director had questionable methods. I heard very concerning reports from former staff." "What kind of reports?" "Excessive medication to keep patients docile, reduction in nursing staff, cuts to therapeutic activities. In short, the clinic became a warehouse for unwanted people." Rebecca felt nauseous. "And my mother? From what I learned later, she was one who suffered the most from the changes. She was questioning. She wouldn't passively accept the mistreatment. That put her in the crosshairs of the new administration." "Crosshairs?" "Problematic patients received stricter treatments, isolation, forced medication, various restrictions." "My God," murmured Rebecca. "When I heard she had run away, I honestly felt relief. It was better to be on the streets than in that place the clinic had become." "Why didn't you report it?" "I did report it. But these kinds of investigations take years, and in the meantime, people keep suffering." Dr. Anthony leaned forward, looking directly into Rebecca's eyes. "Does your mother have family? Someone who can properly care for her?" "She has a daughter," replied Rebecca, without revealing her identity. "But they were separated for years." "Then I suggest that daughter hurry. Dorothy was in an advanced state of deterioration when she left the clinic. There may not be much time for reconciliations." The doctor's words echoed in Rebecca's mind all the way back home. There wasn't much time. She needed to speed up the process of reconnecting with her mother. The next day, she arrived early to meet with James and Dorothy. This time she brought not just breakfast, but also a small bouquet of wildflowers. "For you," she said, offering the flowers to her mother. Dorothy took the bouquet with trembling hands and smelled it delicately. "Violets," she murmured, "my favorite flowers." Rebecca felt a tightness in her chest. Her mother had always grown violets in the garden at home, and Rebecca had chosen these flowers instinctively, without even remembering her mother's preference. "How did you know I like violets?" asked Dorothy, looking directly at Rebecca. "A hunch," she replied softly. "James, this young lady reminds me of someone very important," said Dorothy, still holding the flowers. "Who, Mrs. Dorothy?" "My daughter. She used to bring me violets when she was little." Rebecca and James exchanged a meaningful look. "Tell me about your daughter," said Rebecca carefully. "Oh, she was so clever." Dorothy's eyes lit up. "Always getting the best grades in school and determined. Once she got something into her head, no one could change her mind." "Were you close?" Dorothy's face darkened. "We were. But I did something wrong. I can't quite remember what it was. But she got very angry with me. "I'm sure it was nothing serious," said Rebecca, struggling to keep her voice steady. "No, it was. It was so serious that she sent me away from home." "Perhaps she was just going through a difficult time," suggested Rebecca. "People sometimes do things they regret later." "Do you think she regrets it?" asked Dorothy with a timid hope in her voice. "I'm absolutely certain she does." Dorothy held the violets to her chest and closed her eyes. "I would give anything to see her one more time, to ask for forgiveness." Rebecca could no longer hold back her tears. "Mom," she whispered. Dorothy slowly opened her eyes and stared at Rebecca. "What did you say?" "I said, 'Mom, I am your daughter, Rebecca. It's me.'" The silence that followed seemed to last an eternity. Dorothy studied Rebecca's face as if trying to solve a complex puzzle. "Rebecca," she murmured finally, "it's me, Mom. I'm your daughter. But you look so different. So beautiful and elegant." "Time has passed, Mom, for both of us." Dorothy reached out a trembling hand and gently touched Rebecca's face. "My little girl," she whispered, "you've grown so much." "I've missed you every day," said Rebecca, holding her mother's hand. "Every single day of these 5 years." "5 years?" Dorothy seemed confused. "How long have I been away?" "A long time, Mom. Too long." "I remember a fight," said Dorothy slowly. "You were yelling at me, saying I was messing up your life. I was wrong, Mom. Completely wrong. Forgive me." "But I'm the one who should ask for forgiveness," said Dorothy, beginning to cry. "I'm the one who left home. I'm the one who abandoned you." "No, Mom. I'm the one who threw you out. I'm the one who said terrible things." James, who had observed the entire scene in respectful silence, finally spoke up. "Mrs. Dorothy, remember I told you about a young lady who was going to take care of you. It was her. Your daughter came back to get you." Dorothy looked from Rebecca to James and back to Rebecca. You really want to take me back?" "I want to take care of you forever," said Rebecca firmly, "if you'll let me." "But I'm sick," murmured Dorothy. "Sometimes I don't remember things. Sometimes I get confused." "It doesn't matter, Mom. We'll handle it together." "And James?" asked Dorothy, clutching the sanitation worker's arm. "He can't be left alone. He took care of me when no one else cared." Rebecca looked at James with a grateful smile. "James is coming with us if he wants to. He's part of the family now." James shook his head, moved. "I can't accept—" "Yes, you can," said Rebecca. "And you should. My mother needs the people she loves close by. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out, now continuing." That's how the new phase of Rebecca Harrison's life began. For the first time in 5 years, she had her mother back, and she had also gained an unexpected friend in James. The transition wasn't easy. Dorothy had good days when she clearly recognized her daughter and could hold coherent conversations. But there were also bad days when mental confusion took over and she couldn't remember where she was or who the people around her were. On the bad days, James became essential. He knew exactly how to calm Dorothy, which words to use, which songs to hum to ease her anxiety. Rebecca watched and learned, admiring that man's infinite patience. 1 month after the reunion, Rebecca had completely transformed her life routine. She hired a manager to handle the more routine aspects of her company, while she herself dedicated her time to rebuilding the relationship with her mother. She bought a spacious house in a quiet neighborhood, with a garden where they could plant violets. James agreed to live in the servants' quarters, but in practice became an integral part of the family. They also hired a nurse specialized in geriatric care, Dr. Sarah, who monitored Dorothy's condition and provided guidance on medications and treatments. "Mrs. Dorothy is responding very well to the care," said Dr. Sarah after a checkup. "The loving family environment is making a significant difference in her condition." "Will she get completely better?" asked Rebecca anxiously. "Dementia is progressive," the doctor explained gently, "but we can significantly slow its advance, and most importantly, we can ensure she has quality of life and happy moments. How much time? There's no way to predict exactly. It could be years. The important thing is to cherish every good moment she has. And Rebecca decided to do exactly that. Every day she created small activities to stimulate her mother's memory and well-being. They cooked old family recipes together. They listened to music Dorothy used to play on the piano. They leafed through photo albums, reliving happy moments from the past. James proved to be a fundamental partner on this journey. His experience caring for Dorothy on the streets had developed in him a special intuition about the elderly woman's needs. He knew when she was getting agitated even before the signs became evident. He knew what kind of activity would calm her at any given moment. "How did you learn to care for the elderly so well?" Rebecca asked one afternoon, as they watched Dorothy paint watercolors in the garden. "My mother had Alzheimer's," James replied calmly. "I took care of her until the end. I learned that it's no use fighting the disease. The secret is to adapt to it, to find ways to bring joy even in difficult moments." "And that's why you care for other elderly people on the street?" "Every abandoned elderly person I see reminds me of her. It's my way of honoring her memory." Rebecca felt an even greater admiration for that man who had transformed his pain into compassion for others. It was during an especially quiet afternoon that Dorothy made a revelation that changed everything again. They were in the garden, Dorothy watering her violets, when she suddenly stopped and looked at Rebecca with a very serious expression. "I need to show you something," she said. "What, Mum?" Dorothy went to her room and returned with a small shoebox that Rebecca had never seen before. "I kept this all these years," murmured the elderly woman. "Even when I couldn't remember much, I knew it was important." Dorothy opened the box carefully. Inside were dozens of newspaper clippings, all about Rebecca and her company. Articles about awards received, business expansion, participation in corporate events. "Mom!" Rebecca picked up one of the clippings with trembling hands. "James helped me look for news about you," explained Dorothy. "Every time we found something, I asked him to cut it out and save it. You followed my life all these years. It was my way of continuing to be your mother, even from afar. I was so proud to see how you grew, how you became a successful woman." Rebecca flipped through the clippings, many yellowed with time. There was a complete record of her business career, carefully kept by a mother who never stopped loving her daughter, even in moments of greatest mental confusion. "Why did you never try to look for me?" "I did," said Dorothy simply. "Several times. But you had changed your address, your phone number. And then, when I was in that terrible place, they wouldn't let me make calls." "What terrible place, Mom?" Dorothy's face closed off, as it always did when someone mentioned the time at the clinic. "I don't like to remember," she murmured. "You can tell me, Mom. I'm here to listen." Dorothy took a deep breath before beginning. "When I left home that night, I was very angry and in a lot of pain. I walked the streets aimlessly, not knowing where to go. I ended up getting lost." "Go on." "I spent a few days on the street. I was hungry, cold, completely lost. That's when some men found me and said they were going to help me." "What men?" "They said they were from a clinic, that they would take care of me. At first it seemed like a good place. It had a clean bed, food, medicine. And then? Then things changed. They started giving me too much medicine. They kept me locked in my room all day. When I complained or asked to leave, they gave me injections that made me sleep for hours." Rebecca felt a wave of anger growing inside her. "Did they mistreat you?" "Not physically," Dorothy said quickly, but they didn't treat me like a person. It was as if I were an object, not a human being." "And how did you get out?" "One day they were taking me to another building. The nurse who was with me stopped to talk to someone and got distracted. I ran as fast as I could and never went back." "Why didn't you seek help?" "I was too scared and confused. Sometimes I couldn't even remember my own name. That's when James found me." Rebecca looked out the window and saw James playing with a neighbor's small child in the garden. That man had literally saved her mother's life. "Mom, I need to ask you something important," she said, holding Dorothy's hands. "What?" "Do you forgive me for everything I said that night, for throwing you out of the house, for not looking for you more diligently?" Dorothy looked into her daughter's eyes for a long moment. "My dear, I forgave you the day after our fight. The pain wasn't from being angry with you. It was from having lost you. And I thought you hated me." "Never," said Dorothy firmly. "A mother can be hurt, disappointed, sad. But she never stops loving." The two hugged, crying tears of relief and reconciliation. 5 years of pain and guilt finally being healed by the power of forgiveness. James entered the house at that moment and smiled, seeing mother and daughter embraced. "Everything okay here?" "Better than okay," said Rebecca, drying her tears. "James, I need to ask you a question." "Go ahead." "Why did you never tell me you knew who I was from the very first day?" James smiled shyly. "Because it had to be at the right time. Mrs. Dorothy wasn't ready to accept that you had come back. She needed to first trust you as a person before she could accept you as a daughter." "You planned all this?" "I didn't plan it. I just let things happen naturally. The love you two have was stronger than any hurt. It just needed an opportunity to show itself." Rebecca stood up and gave James a tight hug. "I don't know how I'll ever repay you for all you've done for us." "You already are," he said, pointing to Dorothy, who was tenderly arranging the newspaper clippings, by seeing her happy again. In the following months, the family's routine settled into a harmonious rhythm. Rebecca learned to manage her company in a more balanced way, delegating responsibilities so she could spend more time with her mother. James enrolled in a technical geriatric care course, formalizing the knowledge he had acquired through practice. Dorothy had good days and bad days, but even in moments of confusion, she seemed more at peace. The love and security she felt at home made all the difference in her well-being. One morning, Rebecca woke up and found her mother in the kitchen, preparing breakfast. "Good morning, dear," said Dorothy with a radiant smile. "Good morning, Mother. How are you feeling today?" "Very well, and you, how is business?" Rebecca was surprised. It had been weeks since her mother had asked such clear and contextual questions about her life. "Business is going well, Mother. But nothing is more important than being here with you." "I have an idea," said Dorothy, sitting down at the table. "What if we used your company to help other families like ours?" "How so?" "How many mothers and children must be separated by misunderstandings? How many elderly people must be suffering in bad care facilities? Your company has resources and influence. We can make a difference." Her mother's suggestion struck Rebecca like a revelation. It was a perfect way to give purpose to the resources she had accumulated. "It's a wonderful idea, Mother. Let's talk to James about this." When they told James the idea, he was immediately excited. "I know many elderly people who need help," he said, "and many families who have lost their way." "Then let's make it happen," Rebecca decided. And so the Reunions Project was born, an initiative of Rebecca's company aimed at reuniting separated families and improving the living conditions of vulnerable elderly people. The first case they handled was a lady named Mrs. Margaret, whom James knew from the streets. She had become estranged from her son after an argument over inheritance and had been living in precarious conditions for 3 years. With the help of social workers and psychologists hired by the project, they managed to mediate a reconciliation between Mrs. Margaret and her son. The reunion, held at Rebecca's house, was emotional for everyone involved. "Seeing these people reconcile reminds me why it's worth fighting for forgiveness," commented Dorothy, after witnessing Mrs. Margaret's reunion with her son. The project grew quickly. Within 6 months, they had already reunited 12 families and created a monitoring program for elderly people in private clinics, ensuring they would not suffer the mistreatment Dorothy had faced. The media began to notice the work, and Rebecca was invited to give interviews about the project. "What motivated you to create this initiative?" asked a journalist during an interview. "My own story," Rebecca answered honestly. "I lost 5 precious years with my mother because of pride and lack of communication. I don't want other families to go through the same." "And what is James Anderson's role in the project?" "James is the heart of the project. He taught me that caring for someone is not just about providing material resources, but offering love, patience, and dignity." James, who was watching the interview on television next to Dorothy, was moved by the recognition. "I never imagined that taking care of Mrs. Dorothy would lead me to this," he commented. "You saved more than my life, James," said Dorothy. "You saved my family." 1 year after the reunion, Rebecca decided to organize a party to celebrate. She invited all the families that had been reunited by the project, creating a grand celebration of love and forgiveness. During the party, Dorothy gave a speech that moved everyone present. "2 years ago, I was lost, confused, and alone. Today, I am surrounded by love and with a purpose, to help other people find what I found." "And what did you find?" asked someone from the audience. "I found that it's never too late to start over, that love is stronger than any hurt, and that sometimes angels appear disguised as sanitation workers pushing wooden carts." James was moved by the tribute and stood up to hug Dorothy. "It was Mrs. Dorothy who taught me about family," he said. "I was just a lonely man before I met them." During the party, Rebecca noticed how her life had completely changed. A year earlier, she was a successful but emotionally empty businesswoman. Now she had a family, true friends, and a purpose that went far beyond financial profit. That night, after all the guests had left, Rebecca, Dorothy, and James sat in the garden to talk. "Thank you," Rebecca said suddenly. "Why, dear?" asked Dorothy. "For forgiving me a second chance, for teaching me that family isn't lost, only reunited." "And thank you, James," Rebecca continued, "for taking care of my mother when I didn't know how, for showing me that kindness still exists in the world." James shook his head modestly. "I'm the one who thanks both of you. I never had a real family. Now I do." Dorothy took her daughter's hand and James's hand, uniting the three in a circle. "How wonderful that we found each other," she murmured. "How wonderful that we found each other." 2 years had passed since that transformative morning on Fifth Avenue. The Reunions Project had already brought together more than 50 families and become a national reference in elderly care. Dorothy, although still having episodes of confusion, maintained a quality of life far superior to what the doctors had initially predicted. The constant love and care from Rebecca and James worked wonders for her well-being. James had officially become the project coordinator and had plans to open a training school for elderly caregivers. "I want to teach others how to care with tenderness," he explained. "It's not enough to know medical techniques. You have to know how to listen, have patience, treat each elderly person as if they were family." Rebecca had found a balance between business and personal life that she never imagined possible. Her company remained prosperous, but now it also had a social function that made her deeply proud. On a special afternoon, Dorothy had one of her clearest moments of lucidity. "Dear," she said to Rebecca, "I want to tell you something." "What, Mother?" "All the time we were apart, I prayed every night to see you one more time, but now I realize my prayer was answered in a much greater way than I asked." "How so?" "I only asked to see you. God gave me much more. He gave me the chance to see you become an incredible, generous, and loving woman. He gave me a wonderful son in James. And he gave me the opportunity to help other families reunite." Rebecca hugged her mother tenderly. "You're right, Mother. We received much more than we lost. And do you know what's most beautiful of all?" "What?" "It's that our story began with pain and separation, but it turned into a source of healing for other people. Our tears turned into joy for many families." Dear listener, if you are enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we are just starting out, now continuing. That late afternoon, the three sat in the garden as they did every week. Dorothy watered her violets, James read a book on geriatric care, and Rebecca worked on planning the expansion of the Reunions Project to other cities. It was a scene of domestic peace that contrasted completely with the pain and despair they had all faced years before. But perhaps that was exactly what made that moment so precious, the awareness that happiness is even sweeter when it comes after suffering. "James," Rebecca said suddenly, "do you remember the first day we met? How could I forget? The lady stepped out of that imported car all elegant and haughty, wanting to solve everything with money." "And you put me in my place," laughed Rebecca. "I was just protecting Mrs. Dorothy. I didn't know if I could trust you." And now, do you trust me? Now I see that you are truly Mrs. Dorothy's daughter. You have the same huge heart. It just took a while to discover that. Dorothy looked at the two with a sweet smile. Do you know the greatest lesson I've learned from all this? What is it, Mom? That there are no coincidences. James was in my life waiting for you, Rebecca, and you were in your prosperous life waiting for us. Everything fell into place at the right time. Do you really believe that? I'm sure of it. If we had reunited earlier, perhaps we wouldn't have valued this moment so much. If James hadn't found me, you would never have learned the true value of care. Everything happened as it was meant to. Her mother's simple wisdom always impressed Rebecca. Even with the mental confusion that sometimes affected her, Dorothy maintained an emotional and spiritual clarity that inspired everyone around her. That night, after Dorothy went to sleep, Rebecca and James talked on the porch. Sometimes I wonder what my life would be like if I hadn't met you two, said James. What would it be like? I'd probably still be scavenging trash, living under overpasses, with no future prospects. You gave me a family, a profession, a purpose. You're the one who gave us all that, James. We were two lost and wounded women. You taught us how to be a family again. Perhaps we helped each other. Definitely. And the most beautiful part is that our story is multiplying. Every family we reunite is proof that it's worth believing in love. James nodded thoughtfully. You know what moves me most about the project? What? Seeing that many of the separations we mediate are similar to yours. Misunderstandings, wounded pride, words said in the heat of the moment. And in most cases the love was there all along. It just needed an opportunity to show itself. That's true. Sometimes people just need someone to help them take the first step. They fell silent for a few minutes, enjoying the tranquility of the night. Rebecca, James finally said. Yes? Thank you for accepting me into your family. I know it wasn't mandatory. James, you are the best thing that ever happened to us. My mother loves you like a son, and I consider you the brother I never had. That means a lot to me. And to us too. In the bedroom, Dorothy was getting ready for bed when she noticed something different. For months, she hadn't had nightmares about the clinic or about the separation from her daughter. Her nights were now peaceful, filled with sweet dreams of happy family memories. She pulled from her nightstand drawer a letter she had been writing to Rebecca, a project she had been developing in her moments of greatest lucidity. My dear daughter, read the beginning of the letter, I want you to know that the years we spent apart were not lost. They were years of preparation for this moment of gratitude and love we are living now. Dorothy smiled as she reread her own words. Even in moments of confusion, she held on to the hope that the letter would be finished and delivered to her daughter at the right time. She continued writing, James taught me that family isn't just those born to us, but those who choose to stay with us in difficult times. You chose to come back to me. He chose to care for me, and I choose to forgive and love you both until the last day of my life. As she wrote, Dorothy felt a deep peace. She didn't know how much longer she would have lucidity, but she knew that every moment was being well spent. The project you created is proof that our suffering was not in vain. Every family that is reunited is a victory for us. Every elderly person who receives affection is a little bit of the dignity I lost being restored. She put the letter in the drawer, planning to finish it at the next opportunity of mental clarity she had. The next morning, Rebecca found her mother in the garden, talking animatedly to the violets as if they were old friends. Good morning, Mother. Who are you talking to? To the flowers, answered Dorothy naturally. I was telling them how happy I am today. And why are you happy? Because I have a wonderful daughter, an incredible adoptive son, and a garden full of flowers that grow because they are loved. The simplicity of the answer touched Rebecca deeply. Her mother found joy in the most basic things in life, something she herself had forgotten during years of exclusive focus on business. Mother, can I ask you a question? Of course, daughter. Are you afraid of the future? Of the progression of the disease? Dorothy stopped tending the soil and looked directly at Rebecca. I am, she answered honestly. I'm afraid that one day I won't be able to recognize you and James anymore. I'm afraid of becoming a burden. You will never be a burden. I know you love me. But I also know that caring for someone with my condition isn't easy. It's worth every minute, Mother. Worth every second. It puts me at ease knowing James will be here too. He understands my illness in a special way. Why do you think that? Because he went through it with his own mother. He knows that even when I can no longer speak properly or remember things, I will still be me inside. Rebecca hugged her mother tenderly. I promise we will always see you on the inside, no matter how the illness affects the outside. That promise is worth more than all the medicine in the world. During lunch, James told them about a new family that had sought out the project. It's the most complicated case we've ever handled, he explained. A father and 3 children who haven't spoken in 10 years because of an inheritance. What's the complication? Asked Rebecca. The children believe the father favored one brother. The father is sick and wants to reconcile before it's too late. But the children's pride is preventing any reconciliation. What can we do? I was thinking of using our own story as an example, to show that it's possible to overcome grievances when there's love involved. Dorothy was excited by the idea. I can help too. Sometimes people my age can say things that younger people can't hear from their peers. Great idea, Mother. Your wisdom could make a difference. And so a special meeting was organized. The elderly father and his 3 children were invited to learn about Rebecca's family story. When they arrived, the tension between them was visible. The father, a 70-year-old man named Mr. William, seemed frail and tired. The children, David, Susan, and Michael, kept closed expressions and avoided looking directly at their father. Dorothy was the first to speak. When I look at you, I see my own family 2 years ago, she began softly. I see people who love each other but are too hurt to admit it. You don't know our situation, said Susan, the eldest daughter. You're right, agreed Dorothy. I don't know the details, but I know the pain of family separation. I know the emptiness of spending years without speaking to those we love most. Mr. William was moved upon hearing those words. That's exactly what I feel, he murmured. An emptiness I've never been able to fill. James then told the story of how he found Dorothy and how Rebecca reacted upon learning her mother was alive. Rebecca's first impulse was to offer money to solve the problem, he said, but she soon realized it wasn't a matter of money. It was a matter of humility, forgiveness, and love. Rebecca took the floor. For 5 years I lived under the illusion that I was fine without my mother. I built a business empire, accumulated wealth, received recognition, but deep down, I was empty, because family cannot be replaced by anything. But you were lucky, said David, the middle son. You reunited by chance. It wasn't chance, interrupted Dorothy. It was a choice. Rebecca chose to get out of the car that morning. She chose to come back the next day and the days after. She chose to be humble and ask for forgiveness. And I chose to accept the forgiveness, continued Dorothy. I could have held on to the resentment. I could have rejected her attempts to get closer, but I chose to give a second chance. Mr. William looked at his children with hope. I choose to ask for forgiveness, he said with a choked voice, for any injustice I may have committed, for any favoritism I may have shown. I choose to put my family above my pride. The silence that followed was heavy with tension. Susan was the first to break. Tears began to roll down her face. Dad, we were wrong too, she admitted. We were proud, inflexible. We let material matters become more important than our love for you. David stood up and hugged his father. Forgive me, Dad. Forgive all of us. Michael, the youngest, also became emotional. I missed you so much, Dad. So much. What followed was an emotional reunion, mediated by Dorothy's wisdom and the experience of Rebecca and James. You gave us our family back, said Mr. William at the end of the meeting. How can we repay you? You don't need to repay us, said Rebecca. Repay by taking care of each other from now on. And perhaps by helping other families who need the same thing you needed today, added James. Mr. William and his sons offered to become volunteers for the Reunions Project, sharing their experience with other families in conflict. That night, after everyone had left, Dorothy was particularly excited. Do you know what makes me happiest in all of this? she asked Rebecca and James. What, Mother? It's seeing that our pain has turned into healing for others. It's knowing that other children won't grow up without grandfathers, other mothers won't grow old alone, other fathers won't pass away without saying goodbye to their children. You have a very beautiful way of seeing things, said James. When you reach my age and go through what I've been through, you learn that suffering is only worthwhile when it turns into wisdom that can help others. Rebecca reflected on her mother's words. In just 2 years, they had transformed a personal story of pain into a healing tool for dozens of families. Mother, I have a question. Go ahead. If you could go back in time, would you change anything about our story? Dorothy thought for a long moment before answering. I would change the way we separated. I wish we had talked instead of shouted, but I wouldn't change the fact that we separated. Why not? Because if we hadn't separated, you would never have found James. I would never have learned to value our family so much. You would never have discovered that there is something more important than professional success. And we would never have created this project that is changing so many lives. So, you believe everything happens for a reason? I believe we can give a reason to everything that happens to us. It's up to us to turn difficulties into opportunities for growth and love. James nodded thoughtfully. Mrs. Dorothy is right. If I hadn't lost my mother in a painful way, perhaps I wouldn't know how to care for the elderly with such affection. Exactly, agreed Dorothy. Our wounds can become sources of healing for others. 3 months later, the Reunions Project received a special invitation. The state government wanted them to present a model to be replicated in other regions of the country. It's incredible how a casual morning on Fifth Avenue resulted in a public policy, commented Rebecca during the preparation of the presentation. It wasn't casual, said James with a smile. It was necessary. The presentation was a success. Authorities from various states showed interest in implementing adapted versions of the project in their regions. Dorothy, who had insisted on participating in the presentation despite her family fearing it would be too tiring for her, was the star of the event. Public managers, she said into the microphone with a clear and firm voice, do not forget that behind every statistic of an abandoned elderly person or a broken family, there is a human story. There is real pain of real people, and there is also the possibility of healing and joy. The audience gave her a standing ovation. The project my daughter created is not just about reuniting families, continued Dorothy. It's about reminding society that family is the most precious thing we have. It's about teaching that forgiveness is not weakness, it's courage. And it's about proving that it's never too late to start over. At the end of the presentation, several people approached Dorothy to share their own stories of family separation and ask for advice. You are an inspiration, said a young woman. I also had a terrible fight with my mother. After hearing your story, I'm going to look for her. Don't let pride steal precious moments, advised Dorothy. The time we lose with fights is time that never comes back. On the way back home, Rebecca was particularly proud of her mother. You were wonderful today. I just spoke the truth from my heart, replied Dorothy. And you know what else? Being on that stage, seeing how our story can help other people, gave me more joy than any medicine. How so? During that presentation, I felt useful, important, needed. I haven't felt that way in a long time. James, who was driving the car, smiled through the rearview mirror. Mrs. Dorothy has always been important and needed. She just sometimes forgets that. Perhaps because society treats the elderly as if they were disposable, reflected Rebecca, as if we have nothing more to contribute. Well, I prove that idea is wrong, said Dorothy with determination. Every day I live, every piece of advice I give, every family I help reunite is proof that the elderly are sources of wisdom, not burdens. That night, Dorothy resumed writing her letter to Rebecca. Daughter, today I felt like a complete woman again, not just as a patient who needs care, but as a person who has something valuable to offer the world. She paused her writing to reflect on the day. Seeing so many people interested in replicating the project had filled her heart with hope. I realize now that our separation and reunion were not just a personal story. They were the beginning of something bigger, the beginning of a family healing movement that can reach thousands of people. She smiled, thinking of all the families that had already been reunited and all those that would still benefit in the future. James once told me that angels sometimes appear in disguise. Today I understand that perhaps the three of us are angels to each other, and also to all the families we help heal. 1 year had passed since the project presentation to the state authorities. The program had been implemented in 15 states and already counted more than 300 cases of successful family reunification. Rebecca had become a national reference in corporate social responsibility. Her company grew even more, but now it was known both for its financial success and its positive social impact. James completed his geriatric care course and opened a small training school for caregivers. The school, attached to the Reunions Project, offered scholarships to people in vulnerable situations who wished to professionalize in the field. Dorothy, although she had more frequent episodes of mental confusion, maintained moments of extraordinary lucidity, especially when she was helping other families to reconcile. On a special afternoon, she finally finished the letter she had been writing to Rebecca. "My beloved daughter, if you are reading this letter, it means you have found a special moment for it. I want you to know that every day I have lived since our reunion was an unexpected gift. When I was lost on the streets or suffering in that terrible clinic, I never imagined that one day I would be so happy again. I never imagined that our story would become a source of hope for so many people. James taught me that caring for someone is a privilege, not a burden. You taught me that forgiveness is the most powerful healing tool that exists, and together the three of us, we learned that family is something built every day with love, patience, and dedication. If one day I can no longer express this in words, I want you to reread this letter and remember, I love you, I have always loved you, and I always will. Our separation was painful, but our reunion was miraculous. Use our story to continue healing other families. Use our experience to remind the world that love always conquers pride, that compassion always overcomes anger, and that it is never too late to start over. Thank you for coming back to get me that morning. Thank you for bringing James into our family, and thank you for turning our pain into a source of healing for others. With all my love and gratitude, your mother who loves you infinitely, Dorothy." Dorothy folded the letter carefully and placed it in an envelope with Rebecca's name. She stored the envelope in her special drawer, next to the box with the newspaper clippings. That night, during dinner, she was particularly animated. "I have a surprise for you," she announced. "What surprise, Mom?" "I finished a special project I've been working on for months." "What project?" asked James curiously. "You'll find out at the right time." Rebecca and James exchanged amused glances. Dorothy loved creating mystery with little surprises. A week later, Dorothy had an episode of confusion that lasted longer than usual. For 3 consecutive days, she had difficulty recognizing Rebecca and James, mixing them up with people from the past. Dr. Sarah explained that these episodes were normal in the progression of the disease, but it was still a difficult period for the whole family. On the 4th day, Dorothy woke up with a clear mind again. "Rebecca," she called from the bed. "I'm here, Mom," replied Rebecca, who had spent the last few nights in the next room to always be close. "Are you okay? You look tired." "I'm fine, Mom. How do you feel?" "Better. Much better." Dorothy sat up in bed. "Daughter, I need to give you something." Dorothy opened the drawer of the nightstand and took out the envelope with the letter. "I wrote this for you during my moments of greatest clarity. I want you to keep it and read it whenever you feel longing or doubt." Rebecca took the envelope with trembling hands. "Can I read it now?" "You may." As Rebecca read the letter, silent tears rolled down her face. When she finished, she hugged her mother with all her strength. "Thank you, Mom. I will keep this letter as my most precious treasure. And I want you to know that even when I can no longer express it, my feelings for you and James do not change. Love does not disappear with mental confusion. I know, Mom, and I will never forget." James, who had arrived during the conversation, was also moved upon learning about the letter. "Mrs. Dorothy always thinking of others, even when she is going through difficulties," he commented. It's just that I discovered that thinking of others is the best way to deal with my own difficulties, replied Dorothy wisely. 2 years later, the Reunions Project had become a national public policy. The program was present in every state of the country and had inspired similar initiatives in other Latin American countries. Rebecca was invited to speak about the project at an international conference on aging and family. Our experience proves that simple solutions based on love can have enormous impacts on society, she said during the presentation. We don't need sophisticated technology or gigantic resources. We need compassion, patience, and the willingness to connect people. After the lecture, a woman approached Rebecca. I'm from Portugal and would like to implement a similar project in my country. Is it possible? Of course, replied Rebecca. Love has no borders. Divided families exist all over the world, just as there are people with generous hearts willing to help. And so, gradually, the story of Rebecca, Dorothy, and James began to inspire similar movements in different countries. James, now a recognized expert in humanized geriatric care, received invitations to give lectures at universities and medical conferences. What moves me the most, he said during one of these lectures, is realizing that our personal story has become a tool for social change. This proves that every act of love, no matter how small, can have immense consequences. Dorothy, although she had increasing limitations due to the progression of her condition, continued to be the heart of the project. On her lucid days, she still received families at home and offered precious advice. One afternoon, they received a visit from a special family, Mr. William and his 3 children, who had become one of the project's most remarkable success stories. "We came to thank you once again," said Susan, the eldest daughter. "Our father is well. We are all united, and now we also help other families through the project." "It's the best way to give back," said Dorothy with a sweet smile, "to transform the healing we received into healing for others." "How are you feeling, Mrs. Dorothy?" asked Mr. William. "Some days are better, others are more difficult," she answered honestly. "But even on the difficult days, I am certain that I have lived a full life." "Full? Yes. I knew a daughter's love. I gained a son of the heart. I saw our pain turn into joy for hundreds of families. What more could a mother wish for?" Michael, Mr. William's youngest son, was visibly moved. "You saved our family, literally." "No," corrected Dorothy gently. "You saved your own family when you chose love over pride. I was just there to witness and encourage." After the visiting family left, Rebecca found her mother in the garden, tending to her violets as she always did. "Mother, can I ask you a personal question?" "Of course, daughter." "Are you afraid?" "Afraid of what?" "Of the progression of the disease. Of one day not being able to communicate with us anymore." Dorothy stopped working the soil and looked directly at Rebecca. "Yes, I am afraid. But I am also certain." "Certain of what?" "Certain that our love is stronger than any disease. Certain that you will continue to love me even when I can no longer show that I love you. Certain that our story will continue to heal families even after I can no longer tell it personally." Rebecca hugged her mother tenderly. "We will always love you, Mother, always. And I will always love you, even if sometimes I cannot express it. Love does not depend on words or memory to exist." End of story. Now tell us what you thought of this moving story. Do you identify with any of the characters? Have you been through any family reconciliation situation? Leave your comment sharing your experience, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more touching stories like this one. Your participation is very important to us.